What if I told you there's a time of night when your own reflection isn't the only thing staring back at you? In the quiet town of Maplewood, people are terrified to look in the mirror at exactly 3:33 a.m. Some say they see a faceless shadow reaching out from the glass. Tonight, I'll share the chilling story that made an entire town cover their mirrors and ask, would you dare to look?
The shadow in the mirror.
They say nothing good happens after midnight, but for the people of Maplewood, the real terror began at 3:33 a.m. That was the hour when the shadows grew long, and the mirrors in every home seemed to shimmer with something not quite right. It started with a single scream echoing down Willow Lane, waking the whole neighborhood. The scream belonged to Mrs. Carter, a retired schoolteacher known for her calm demeanor and love of late-night tea. Her house, a cozy blue cottage with white shutters, sat at the end of the lane, surrounded by rose bushes and a picket fence. On that night, the air was thick with summer heat, and most windows were open to catch the faintest breeze. When Mrs. Carter's scream shattered the silence, it was as if the whole town held its breath. Neighbors rushed outside in their pajamas, clutching flashlights and cell phones. Mr. Jenkins, who lived next door, was the first to reach her front porch. He found Mrs. Carter standing in her hallway, trembling, her face pale as moonlight. She kept glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting something, or someone, to follow her. "It was in the mirror," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It was right behind me." The police arrived within minutes, their blue and red lights painting the quiet street in frantic color. Officer Ramirez, who had known Mrs. Carter since childhood, gently led her to the living room and offered her a glass of water. She clutched it with shaking hands, her eyes darting to the hallway mirror every few seconds. "I saw a shadow," she said, her voice steadier now but still tinged with fear. "It wasn't my reflection. It was something else. It moved when I didn't. It reached for me." The officers searched the house, checking every room, every closet, even the attic. They found nothing unusual, no signs of forced entry, no footprints, no evidence of an intruder. The only thing out of place was the mirror in the hallway. It was spotless, but when Officer Ramirez looked into it, he felt a chill run down his spine. For a split second, he thought he saw something flicker in the glass, a dark shape, gone as quickly as it appeared. By dawn, the story had spread. Mrs. Carter's scream was all anyone could talk about. Some dismissed it as a nightmare, a trick of the light, or the result of too much late-night television. But others, especially those who had lived in Maplewood their whole lives, remembered old stories whispered by grandparents, stories about the witching hour, about things that moved in the dark, about mirrors that showed more than just your reflection. That day, the town felt different. People avoided looking into mirrors, glancing away from their own reflections as they brushed their teeth or combed their hair. Children asked their parents to cover the bathroom mirrors before bed. Even the bravest souls felt a prickle of unease when they caught their own eyes in the glass. No one could explain what had happened to Mrs. Carter, but everyone agreed on one thing: something had changed in Maplewood. The shadows seemed deeper, the nights longer, and the mirrors, once ordinary household objects, now held a silent, shimmering threat. And as the sun set and darkness crept back into the corners of every home, the people of Maplewood wondered what would happen when the clock struck 3:33 a.m. again. The next morning, Maplewood buzzed with nervous energy. The sun rose over the sleepy town, but it did little to chase away the chill that had settled in overnight. At the corner bakery, where the scent of fresh bread usually brought comfort, the only thing on anyone's lips was Mrs. Carter's midnight terror. She said it was a shadow, right there in the mirror," whispered Mrs. Patel, pouring coffee for her regulars. She turned around, but nothing was there. Then she looked back, and it was closer. Its hand was almost on her shoulder. The story spread like wildfire. By the time the school bell rang, even the children were whispering about the shadow in the mirror. Some giggled nervously, daring each other to look into the bathroom mirrors between classes. Others avoided the restrooms altogether, clutching their friends' hands and glancing over their shoulders. At the hardware store, Mr. Jenkins recounted what he'd seen. "She was white as a sheet, I tell you. I've never seen anyone so scared. And Mrs. Carter isn't the type to make things up." He shook his head, lowering his voice. "She said the shadow moved when she didn't. Like it had a mind of its own." By noon, the story had taken on a life of its own. People began to share their own strange experiences from the night before. Mrs. Alvarez, who lived 2 streets over, confessed to her neighbor that she'd woken up at exactly 3:33 a.m., feeling an icy draft in her bedroom. When she glanced at her vanity mirror, she thought she saw something move behind her, a flicker of darkness, gone in an instant. At the high school, a group of students huddled in the hallway, eyes wide with fear. "My little brother said he saw a face in the bathroom mirror," whispered one girl. But when he told Mom, she just laughed and said he was dreaming. But not everyone was so quick to dismiss the stories. The town's pastor, Father O'Malley, stood at the pulpit during morning mass and spoke in hushed tones about the dangers of fear and superstition. "We must not let shadows rule our hearts," he said, though even he seemed uneasy, glancing at the stained glass windows as if expecting something to appear. As the day wore on, more and more people admitted to seeing the same thing, a faceless shadow lurking in their reflections, always at 3:33 a.m. Some described it as tall and thin, with arms that seemed to stretch and bend in impossible ways. Others said it had no face at all, just a blank, shifting void where eyes and a mouth should be. By sunset, Maplewood was a town on edge. Mirrors were covered with towels and sheets. Some families went so far as to turn their mirrors to face the wall or move them into the garage. Children slept with the lights on, and even the bravest adults found themselves hesitating before glancing into the bathroom mirror late at night. The local news picked up the story, sending a reporter to interview Mrs. Carter. She sat on her porch, hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes darting to the windows behind her. "I know what I saw," she insisted. "It wasn't a dream. It was real. And I'm not the only one." As darkness fell once more, the people of Maplewood waited. Some tried to convince themselves it was all in their heads, a trick of the light or a shared nightmare. But deep down, everyone wondered, what would they see if they looked into the mirror at 3:33 a.m.? And as the clock ticked closer to that haunted hour, the shadows in Maplewood seemed to grow just a little bit longer. Panic spread through Maplewood like a cold wind, chilling every home and heart. By the second night, the town was gripped by a fear that felt almost contagious. It wasn't just Mrs. Carter's story anymore, it was everyone's. The shadow in the mirror had become a shared nightmare, and no one wanted to be the next victim. Parents, desperate to protect their children, took drastic measures. Mirrors were covered with old bed sheets, towels, and even newspapers. Some families taped cardboard over bathroom mirrors, while others simply turned them to face the wall. The hardware store sold out of masking tape and thumbtacks in a single afternoon. In some homes, mirrors were removed entirely, stacked in garages or basements, as if distance alone could keep the darkness at bay. Children, usually fearless in their routines, now refused to brush their teeth or wash their faces alone. Siblings went to the bathroom in pairs, clutching each other's hands and keeping their eyes fixed on the floor. Even the bravest kids, the ones who used to tell ghost stories at sleepovers, now shuddered at the thought of catching their own reflection after dark. The local news, always eager for a headline, called it mass hysteria. Reporters interviewed psychologists and skeptics, who explained the phenomenon as a case of collective suggestion. When one person sees something strange, others are more likely to see it too, said Dr. Larkin, a visiting expert from the city. It's the power of the mind, not the supernatural. But the people of Maplewood knew what they had seen, or thought they had seen. The fear was real, and it was everywhere. Then, almost overnight, a new rule swept through the town: don't look in the mirror after 3:30 a.m. It started as a whisper, a warning passed from neighbor to neighbor, parent to child. Soon, it was written on sticky notes taped to bathroom doors and scrawled in chalk on sidewalks. "Don't look after 3:30" became the unofficial motto of Maplewood, a line drawn in the sand against the unknown. But curiosity, as always, proved to be a powerful force. For every person who avoided mirrors, there was someone who couldn't resist the urge to look. Some did it out of skepticism, convinced that the whole thing was a hoax or a trick of the mind. Others were simply drawn by the thrill of the forbidden, the same way people are drawn to haunted houses or scary movies. Each night, a few brave, or foolish, souls stood in front of their mirrors as the clock crept toward 3:33 a.m. Some set up their phones to record, hoping to capture proof of the shadow. Others whispered challenges to the darkness, daring it to show itself. Most saw nothing but their own tired faces, pale and anxious in the dim light. But a few, just a few, claimed to see something else. One teenager, Jake, posted a shaky video online. In it, he stared into his bathroom mirror, eyes wide with fear. As the clock on his phone turned to 3:33, the room seemed to grow colder. The video was grainy, but viewers swore they could see a dark shape flicker behind him, just for a moment. Jake's video went viral, and soon, people from other towns began sharing their own stories and footage. The rule remained: don't look in the mirror after 3:30 a.m. But the temptation was always there, lurking in the back of everyone's mind. What if the shadow was real? What if it wasn't? The line between fear and curiosity blurred, and Maplewood became a town divided, those who followed the rule, and those who dared to break it. And every night, as the clock ticked closer to that haunted hour, the mirrors waited, silent and shimmering, for someone to look. Mia had always considered herself a skeptic. Ghost stories were for campfires and sleepovers, not for real life. She rolled her eyes at the rumors swirling through Maplewood, convinced that fear and boredom had gotten the better of her neighbors. But as the days passed and the stories grew more intense, even Mia felt a twinge of curiosity. What if there was something to it? What if, just this once, the town's whispers were more than just superstition? On a Thursday night, Mia made up her mind. She would prove, once and for all, that the shadow in the mirror was nothing but a trick of the imagination. She set her alarm for 3:32 a.m., tucked her phone under her pillow, and tried to sleep. The hours crawled by, her mind racing with what-ifs and maybes. When the alarm finally buzzed, her heart was already pounding. She crept out of bed, careful not to wake her parents. The house was silent, the kind of deep, heavy silence that only comes in the middle of the night. Shadows pooled in the corners of the hallway as she made her way to the bathroom. She flicked on the light, squinting against the sudden brightness, and set her phone on the counter, camera facing the mirror. Mia took a deep breath and checked the time. 3:32 a.m. She pressed record, her reflection staring back at her, messy hair, tired eyes, a hint of defiance in her jaw. "Okay, let's get this over with," she whispered, forcing a shaky smile. The seconds ticked by. At first, nothing happened. The only sound was the faint hum of the bathroom fan and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Mia's nerves began to settle. She almost laughed at herself. This was ridiculous. She was about to turn off the camera when she felt it, a sudden drop in temperature, as if someone had opened a window to the winter night. Goosebumps prickled her arms. Her breath came out in a visible puff, fogging the glass. She frowned, rubbing her hands together for warmth. That's when she saw it. At the very edge of the mirror, a shadow began to form. It was subtle at first, just a smudge of darkness that didn't belong. Mia leaned closer, squinting. The shadow grew, stretching upward, taking on a vaguely human shape, tall, impossibly thin, with arms that seemed to reach and bend in unnatural ways. Its face was a blank void, shifting and swirling like smoke. Mia's heart hammered in her chest. She spun around, expecting to see someone, anyone, standing behind her. The bathroom was empty. The door was still closed. She was alone. She turned back to the mirror, and her blood ran cold. The shadow was closer now, looming just behind her reflection. Its hand, long and claw-like, reached out, hovering inches from her shoulder. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. The air felt thick, pressing in on her from all sides. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The only thing that existed was Mia, the mirror, and the shadow. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the darkness began to fade. The bathroom warmed, her breath no longer fogged the glass, and the shadow melted away, leaving only her own terrified reflection staring back. Mia stumbled out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind her. She pressed her back against the wall, heart racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had she imagined it? Was it just a trick of the light, or had she really seen the shadow that haunted Maplewood's mirrors? She didn't know. But as she clutched her phone, she realized the camera had been recording the whole time. Mia ran from the bathroom, slamming the door behind her so hard the frame rattled. She pressed her back against the cool hallway wall, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. For a long moment, she just stood there, listening to the silence of the house, half expecting to hear footsteps or see a shadow slip beneath the door. But nothing happened. The house was as still as ever, as if the darkness she'd seen was just a bad dream. But Mia knew it wasn't. Her hands shook as she picked up her phone, the screen still glowing with the recording. She didn't dare watch it right away. Instead, she crept back to her room, locked the door, and crawled under her covers, shivering until the first light of dawn crept through her window. The next morning, Mia's fear was replaced by a burning curiosity. Had the camera caught anything? Was there proof of what she'd seen, or would it all look like a trick of the light? With trembling fingers, she opened the video and watched. At first, it was just her own reflection, looking tired and a little scared. But then, as the clock on her phone ticked to 3:33, the temperature in the room seemed to drop even through the screen. Mia watched herself shiver, saw her breath fog the glass, and then, unmistakably, the shadow appeared. It was just as she remembered, a tall, faceless figure, its hand reaching out for her shoulder. The image was blurry, the lighting poor, but the darkness in the mirror was real. Mia's heart pounded as she watched herself spin around, searching for the source, and then turned back to see the shadow even closer. The video ended with her running from the room, the camera shaking wildly. Mia didn't hesitate. She uploaded the video to her social media with a simple caption, "This is what I saw at 3:33 a.m. I'm not the only one, right?" She expected a few friends to comment, maybe some classmates to tease her. But by noon, the video had been shared hundreds of times. described a voice whispering her name from the glass. A man in Germany claimed the shadow had tried to pull him through the mirror, leaving a cold handprint on his shoulder. Others posted their own videos, some more convincing than others, but all filled with the same sense of dread. News outlets picked up the story. The Maplewood Mirror Mystery. Reporters flocked to the small town, interviewing residents and filming segments in front of the now famous Carter house. Psychologists weighed in, calling it a case of mass suggestion, while paranormal investigators insisted it was proof of something otherworldly. Maplewood, once a quiet, forgotten town, was suddenly famous. Tourists arrived, hoping to catch a glimpse of the haunted hour. Some even tried to break the rule, daring each other to look in the mirror at 3:33 a.m. But most residents stuck to the new tradition, covering their mirrors, avoiding their reflections, and warning outsiders to do the same. The rule remained, passed from neighbor to neighbor, parent to child: never look in the mirror at 3:33 a.m. And if you ever see a shadow reaching for you, remember, some reflections are better left unseen. Mia watched the world react to her story, both proud and uneasy. She knew the truth of what she'd seen, and she knew the shadow was still out there, waiting for the next curious soul to break the rule. As night fell over Maplewood, the mirrors shimmered in the darkness, holding secrets that no one was eager to face again.
If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more mysterious tales every week. Thanks for watching, and remember, some reflections are better left unseen. See you in the next story.